Hello, Pablo. You are up first, sir.
Hey Bart. So yeah, this hands out a turning stone.
Turning stone.
Yeah.
Turning stone. You know why I say turning stone and I giggle?
Why?
Because I went to Syracuse University. I graduated in 2001, and my 18th birthday, I went to college when I was 17. I was one of those young, you know, go to kindergarten when you're 4. So I turned
hmm
18 on October 16th when I was a freshman. They did not have poker at Turning Stone, but I was such a degen that I took the bus, the Greyhound bus from Syracuse to Turning Stone on my 18th birthday to go play blackjack. And I went back there and actually played Poker Night in America, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago or something like that. But I remember Turning Stone, man. So you're from upstate New York?
Yeah, originally from New York City, but I live in Syracuse myself right now.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for you.
Man, it's brutal out here
Oh,
sometimes.
dude.
Summers are beautiful. Winters are just, it might as well be Alaska.
I mean, I always kind of make fun of upstate New York. I know Rochester area is actually being built up as kind of like a little bit of a tech hub, but Syracuse is a tough place, man.
It is. It is. The cost of living is, makes up for a lot of
That's true.
the other stuff.
But I definitely spent several years of my life there. So, all right, Turning Stone. What's the level of the game?
So this is a 1-3 match to stack.
Oh, wow, 1-3 match, huh? Nice.
It plays pretty big for a 1-3. It plays probably like a bigger 2-5.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Because I mean, Match Stack is in essence uncapped, right? Once the game gets going. Yeah.
hmm
How often does that game go?
I would say about 5 days a week. Usually
Wow.
Mondays, Tuesdays are like hit or miss, but sometimes you'll get a late game going, and those are probably the best ones.
And it's the biggest game in the room, right? Obviously, I would imagine.
Yeah, on average, it's the biggest game. Now we have a series coming up, WSOP Circuit Series, so there'll be bigger games.
Yeah, I saw one of my buddies ask me about that. He said, "Would you want to go to Turning Stone for a tournament series?" I'm like, dude, I don't want to fucking go back to Syracuse. The drive is awful from here. It's like 5 hours of nothingness. I will say that like a 1-3 match stack from what I remember in Texas can play like, 2000 effect, a great game. It could be $100 an hour game.
I played last night and I was in for 4K. I had a small
Yeah.
loss, but it plays big, yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. So Turning Stone 1-3 match. What are the stacks here?
This 1800 effective,
Okay.
nine-handed.
So sometimes straddle on or what?
Yeah, depending on the group, we'll do a mandatory straddle, but this one was like a 50-50. So it wasn't on 100%.
Okay. And it's on this hand or what?
Yeah, this hand
Okay.
does have an under the gun straddle.
Okay.
So folds to hijack, and he raises to 15, which is really odd. Usually the standard open is 15 without a straddle.
Without a straddle, right? Because it's 1-3-6. It's really small, right?
Yeah, it's tiny. He opens to 15 in the hijack, folds to me in the small blind. I have ace of hearts, king of spades, and we three bet to 65.
Ace of Hearts, King of Spades. I mean, obviously you would have 3-bet anyways, even if he had opened to like 25 or whatever
Right,
normal.
right.
I just wonder when you give that setup of like it's not always on. Sometimes people forget, you know what I mean? And it's
hmm
weird how, a game that's 1-3-6 all the time is definitely different than sort of a 1-3-6 half the time, different from a 1-3-6 with one guy straddling, a little bit different for people that approach it. So you go to 65, which is 4x, a little bit over 4x from out of position. You could even go a little bit larger, but whatever. Okay, so you go to 65.
Yeah, and then big blind is like mid 20s, unknown. Was at the table for like 3 or 4 hands. I didn't really see much, so I have no reads on this kid. I've never even seen him in the room before. He cold four bets me to 180.
So big blind cold 4-bet
hmm
to 180. Okay.
So the straddle folds and the hijack folds, and I don't think five betting here is with ace king offsuit. Maybe ace king suited, we could consider five betting. So I just flatted.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's mostly going to be a flat with I mean it's not the tightest configuration in the world, although hijack with three blinds is somewhat early to mid almost, right? I mean it's kind of midish. Guys, I mean anytime someone live at a 1-3 game is cold 4-betting you, that's a strong range. I would almost always call here. Let me ask you this question. If the hijack cold called in between, would you consider putting in the 5-bet here?
Yeah, for sure. Because I don't want to take ace king offsuit multi way out of position.
So goes to 180, hero calls, and we're off to like what, like 375 or something like that, right? Yeah. Okay. Yep.
So flop is the queen of hearts,
Hmm.
jack of spades, nine of clubs.
So Queen Jack 9, you have Ace of Hearts, King of Spades. I mean, you have a gut shot, obviously, to a 10, but
Hmm.
it's not really the best flop for you. Depending on the sizing here, you probably have a fair amount of continues. I would say that this is an interesting texture because again, it's one of these things that's sort of hard to sort of mentally sim. Like if you took a ridiculously large sizing here, like say 300, 350, I think you probably can find a fold, but you're going to have to continue with anything that's small sizing. It's just interesting because Ace King's going to be a continue on a lot of boards where you miss anyways. Like if the board came out like 7 deuce 3, you have to check call. But on certain boards, here obviously you've got 2 overcards and a gut shot. So I assume you check. You start with a check.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree with everything you said there. But yeah, we check, and he bets really small here. He bets 75.
Yeah, 75, huh?
75, yeah. So I mean, I don't think check raising. I
No.
mean, maybe sometimes, but I just called. I don't think check raising here is much of an option because then if he bets 3 bets, he blows the fuck.
Yeah, and I think with the properties of your hand, yeah, definitely. I mean, I would stick to possibly maybe sometimes check raising if you were going to do this as a bluff. Although it's interesting because on this board, you probably have more nines than he does. Although if he's playing a 4-bet or fold strategy, everybody could have everything here. You know what I'm saying? Like if he's playing a 4-bet or fold strategy, which maybe not might be the case in live poker, he could have king 10 suited, he could have 9-9, he could have jack jack. I was just saying like maybe like ace 10 suited with the backdoor would be more of a check raise if you were considering check raising against small sizing. I do think I call here quite a bit.
Yeah. So yeah, we called.
Yep.
The turn. So the pot's about 525.
Yep.
Turn is the 10 of diamonds.
Wow. Now this is really interesting because again, talking about how do you sit, like what do you like, how do you play these particular spots here? Now I will say that there are, because obviously you make the nuts, right, with ace king. Now I will say though that like on the surface people might just gut react and it's like, well, how can you lead this card because the pre-flop raiser is going to have the one that's going to have ace king, not you. But you have ace king off here. I mean, that is ace king. I mean, ace king off is a call heads up here, right, to a cold 4-bet. So, I mean, you've got 12 combos of ace king off here. So when you have the nuts in your range, you are absolutely allowed to lead. The thing that's interesting, though, from just a perspective of what you do with other hands, it's really, really hard to balance in a spot like this because even if you had like king queen suited here, right? Like say you check call the flop with king queen suited or king jack suited, right? Are you going to lead here a lot on the turn? I mean, maybe, but a lot of people would be like, well, I'm going to check and see what's going on here against somebody with ace king,
Right. Yeah, I considered. I considered leading out here because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want him to check back, and I feel like he might continue with like aces there. I'm sure he's going to continue with sets. I considered leading, but I opted to check to him, and he bet 325.
Wow. Now this is interesting. So again, I think you do have some leads here.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a totally rainbow board, so you can't find like a backdoor diamond type of lead in a given situation. So it's like, wow, what do you?
That's one of the things I considered. If it brought a backdoor flush draw, then I'd be more inclined to raise or to lead or even check raise. To be honest.
Again, it's a really interesting hand because when I was reading about this, when I was reading your submission, I thought, several days ago, I'm like, well, do you just call down here? Do you just call and then go for a check raise on the river? Because when he bets this card, he's saying that he has basically a king here or a bluff. I mean, I think a lot of sets check through. And then you're like, well, if the river breaks out, we check, he bets a king, and then we check raise him. And we get that type of value. But with that being said, though, it's not like if he does have a king here and you check raise, it's not like he's going to necessarily fold. So let's take a look at the stack sizes. I mean, if you were deeper here, I definitely think that you have to put money in the pot at some point here too. Now, if you just call, the pot's going to be 1150, and you guys have put in like what? So you're going to have right around a pot size bet left, right?
Yeah, just about.
I mean, if you do decide to call, how are you playing? What is your plan to play across rivers here?
Well, we'll see what happens on the river, and then either I think I'm just gonna play a check call strategy mostly because me just leading river, I don't know if it makes much sense. If it's a brick, so I don't know. My plan was just to check call the river, to be honest.
Well, check raise if it's a brick, right?
Well, yeah, check raise if it was a brick,
Right.
but check call if it was a scare card or.
I don't, you know what's interesting? Because now I remember this. You know what's interesting about this, though? Now, we can talk about how you want to play this turn because of the fact that it's a one-liner out there, right? Like you say, well, I'm going to check call. But here's the thing, though, Pablo. Even if the river pairs the board, okay? Let's say it pairs the 9. Maybe it depends on what the pair is. When you guys have a pot-sized bet left, say the river comes off a 9 here. So let's say you call, because it sounds to me like you are going to call. Did you call? You just called, right?
Yeah, we just called.
All right, so here we call. So again, now the pot is, say, right around 1175, and you've got just under a pot-sized bet left. What I was going to say here is that depending on what the board pairing river is here, if we go with the assumption that he's not betting sets on the turn, right, because of the one-line nature, and now like the river is a 9 or the river is a 10 or something like that, and you check to him and he bets, how do you not check raise him all in? Because you're beating a king that might be forced to call off. You see what I'm saying? Unless you somehow think a king is going to check behind. It's just, This is and I see Nate in the live chat, this is like a hard live node lock here, which says, and it might even be like a theoretical node lock, but it says that no sets are betting turn. If no sets are betting turn, if we are making the assumption that no sets are betting turn, I don't think a board pair matters at the end with your plan to check raise all in at the end.
Right.
With a pot size bet left. So, all right, 1175 here to the river.
Yep, the river is the 10 of spades.
Okay.
Pairs the 10.
So, you are losing to boats, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which would be queen, queen, and jack, jack. And the reason why I keep saying this is that if the opponent had queen, queen, or jack, jack here and started off with a small bet and a cold 4-bet pot, how often do you think he's betting the turn?
I mean, with this kid, I didn't have any reads, so I don't think he would get too out of line on the turn with sets. He might just check back and then evaluate the river. I mean, I probably would check back with a set on the turn as well, just with the one-liner out there, especially, because King X is in the small blinds range quite often there, calling a 4-bet. So yeah, I'd probably check back a set myself on the turn.
Michael Perry, 1985 says, villain should be betting sets on the turn. Really? I like I said, I might be making too much of an assumption. I just think he gets checked through a lot. All right, so
maybe a tiny bet. I don't know. Maybe like a 1/3, or I don't know what sizing would be optimal there, but I personally would probably check back a set.
Now, with that being said, though, because he bets so small on the flop, then you do get to the turn with a larger volume of hands, so it doesn't just have to be King X. So there is that to think about. But okay, so 1175 to this. So it's Queen, Jack, 9, 10, 10. You turn the nuts, but the board pairs in this cold 4-bet pot. I assume you check.
Yes, we check, and he bets 900. I think he didn't realize that I had a little bit more behind.
So
he bet 900. He just threw out like a purple chip and 4 blacks.
So the big blind bets 900. So you have like 1100, 1200 to the river? Some between 1100 and 12 starting the river,
I have about 250 behind or something like that. Something in that range.
Well, all right. So this is straight out. I know you're a CLP subscriber, Pablo, too. I think you might even be a yearly elite subscriber. I appreciate that. If you, and I hope the site has helped you.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and I would say this is straight out of a term that I absolutely made up back in the day. And we have a whole list in our article section. What I like to call reverse pot odds. Now, not reverse implied odds, but I call this reverse pot odds. Now, what reverse pot odds says is that you can actually go much, much thinner, you as the hero in this situation, and thinner would being like a check raise all in, because the pot is going to be so large and there's so little left. If you jam, let's just say that you have 1200 just to make it even, right? So if you jam for 1200 here, he bets 9 into 1175, so it's like 2075. If you jam 1200, the pot's going to be 3275, 300 for him to call.
Right.
So there's just no way he can fold a king. So then you just get to the question of, okay, well, and the math on that, though, of course, is in order for you to make the decision whether or not you should call or raise, is that will that last 250 to 300, if you do raise, will it get called by worse more than 50% of the time?
Right.
That's the question here. And I just think that the way that I talked this one out,
it should be getting called.
I just, people are saying feels like a call, but I understand if he had a bunch of money left, you could absolutely make a case for that. But if he's still calling with all, now on the flip side, as a counter argument to what I'm saying, if people are going to say, well, he's polarized here to a boat or a bluff, then it would just be a call. But I don't know. Now, obviously, too, he can have ace king, which he's never folding here, too. But if I was playing this hand in this manner, I would have thought of it. If I was going to call the turn only, I would have actually thought through to this scenario, thinking ahead. And I think I probably would have thought ahead and said, you know what? Like, if this happens, I'm still putting it in. It is a little bit interesting, though, that he bet so large. So what did you end up doing?
Well, that was my thought on the turn. I'm like, I told myself I'm probably going to go with this regardless of what happens. So we make the call. And he says, you're good.
Wow. He triple barreled in a 4-bet pot, huh?
Yeah. And he shows his hand too.
Okay.
He revealed ace-7 of spades.
So he had one of those ace-7 of spades. So, I mean, he just doesn't have anything here, right? Like on the turn.
He just blocks ace-king. That's about it.
So he started with a $75 bet. Yeah, I wonder about that. And then he bet the turn. Obviously, he blocks ace-king, right, in this particular spot. But it's an interesting one because of what I was saying with reverse pot odds and what sets bet turn. Because a lot of people disagree with me in the chat that's saying that this is just a call down, but I just don't see the boats that play this way all that much. But interesting one, Pablo. Do you think you should have raised all in?
I mean, after seeing this hand, no, because clearly he's not calling. But I didn't think so. I felt like it was just, it was almost like an all in to me at that point. So I just felt, whatever, call the 900. Let's get the showdown.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might have left a little bit behind, but.
But you understand what I'm saying about how he gets great pot odds, right?
Yeah, for sure. He can't, he's folding just the pure bluff. That's about it.
And again, just to flip, to play against, to make an argument against myself, which could be true, maybe he doesn't bet just king X at the end too. You have to consider that with the board pairing because you've got a lot of boats too, right?
Yeah.
But that's a good one, Pablo. I really appreciate the call. Thank you very much.